If you ask modern women whether a body count is a concern in any way at all, a lot of them, maybe even most of them, would tell you that it's not. The body count just doesn't matter, that it's a holdover from a time of patriarchy and women being controlled by men, and that any idea that the number of men that a woman has been with is important is a holdover from this ancient time, and the issue should never be brought up again. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, obviously, there was a time when virginity was held in very high regard, and the idea that a woman's being with a lot of men isn't a concern, I'm not so certain that that's a valid statement at all. I was recently watching an interview where a guy was asking this woman about how many men she had been with, and there was also a young man that was there, a decent looking guy, who was a virgin. And I think he was there sort of as, for the shock value, because he must have been like 21, 22. And she was not that much older than him, maybe mid to late 20s. But anyway, when she was asked how many men she had been with, it was 1,572. And she was quite proud of it. Now, when I heard that number, I think I vomited just a tiny bit in my mouth. There was definitely a gag reflex to that experience. I wonder how you guys feel about it. Anyway, today, let's talk about body count. Is it really important? Are we just overstating it? Or does it really matter in a meaningful way? It wasn't that long ago when virginity was held in the very highest regard. And a woman whose virginity was not intact was problematic. So here we are in the age of unlimited birth control from any number of different sources. I mean, obviously there's the pill and condoms, there's foam, there's diaphragms, there's IUDs. I mean, there's any number of ways that we have now to stop babies from coming into the world. But is the frequency or the total number of men that a woman has been with, does that affect the way other men view that woman from that point forward? Does that label her in some way as being less desirable? Well, I think that it probably does for a number of reasons. So let's start with the most obvious one, and that is disease. The sexual act is a very intimate one, and there's a lot of fluids being exchanged during this process. And we all know that sexually transmitted diseases can be pretty serious. And although the more common ones are pretty easily resolved, there are still a handful that there are no cures for. And if you get one of these diseases, it's yours for life. And it may be a shortened life. So, yeah, there's that. Now, just because a woman has not had a lot of prior lovers doesn't necessarily make her virtuous either. I mean, if she's got a really vile personality or she's not very attractive for some reason, maybe she's got bad body odor or bad breath, who knows? But just because her number is really low, that doesn't necessarily mean that she's a winner. No. So you got to take a lot of things into account. So if someone who's really not attractive and doesn't have very much opportunity to have very many lovers, now think about someone who's extremely attractive and has, endless opportunities. How high should her number be? I mean, can she be a 5 or a 10 or a 15? How old is she? Maybe like by 25, so she's been maybe sexually active for, say, 7 to 10 years, and she has 5 or 10 priors. That's a tough one. It's a little bit gray, because if she's a 9 or a 10 and she's really super hot, and she's had maybe a handful of long-term relationships and maybe a couple of short-term relationships, I don't know. It's an interesting question. But it's one we definitely need to take into account when we're making a decision about what number is right for us. Because that's really what it boils down to, is what number is right for you. Hey, 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 stop it, you two. So let me show you what's going on here. All right, so this guy is Dibu. He was my daughter's dog for a long time. He is a puppy. I know he does not look like a puppy, but he is 100% puppy. He's just over a year old, but he's a slow learner. He has not spent much time on a leash, and he has not spent much time in a community of dogs. So we are having a lot of teaching going on. And because he weighs so much and he's quite strong and impulsive, he frequently pulls me around. So just be aware if you see me filming and suddenly I am gone, it's because he's dragged me into the woods. I think that men see past relationships or the past behavior of a potential wife or girlfriend as a clue as to what their future might be like. So a woman who has found that having a lot of sex is fun or enjoyable for whatever reason and has a lot of men in her life, well, that's probably going to continue. That's probably not something that's going to go away. And so a lot of men are going to back away from a woman who has a lot of male relationships simply for that reason, just because the opportunity for cheating is going to be much, much higher. The next thing to consider is that men look for women with a good reputation in the same way that women look for men who are high status. So a woman who has a good reputation because she's classy, she holds herself in high regard, she is kind and thoughtful, she's just someone who has a lot of self-respect. That's the kind of woman you want to bring home to your family. That's the kind of person that you invite to meet your mom. A woman who has a really bad reputation these days really is going to struggle to hide it because social media is such that this information just will come out. And the last thing you want is to find out you've fallen in love with and intend to marry or have already married the town slut. That's not going to be cool. You know, your friends are going to come up and say, dude, what the hell are you doing? Why are you with this girl? You know, I was with this girl like 3 years ago. Yeah, you don't want to have that experience. You don't want your friends to know your wife better than you. You know what I mean? That wouldn't be good. A woman with a high body count probably, there's a very good chance, she's going to have a lot of emotional trauma associated with those past relationships. Not all of them, but some of them, and maybe a lot of them. If a woman is using sex as a tool for getting a relationship going, she's opening the relationship with sex, she's creating some kind of an emotional bond with this guy at some level, and she's hoping that this is going to turn into something. And if it turns out, as it oftentimes does in one-night stands or sex on the first date, that she's being rejected and she doesn't get a call back from that guy, well, how could she not wonder if there was something wrong with her? The truth of the matter is there is something wrong with her, and it's not her personally, it's the way she's behaving. But she won't put two and two together because women don't do that. They don't think that way. The fact that she's opening the relationship with sex may just turn off enough guys that they would never want to talk to her again, but that won't stop them from having sex with her, and she won't understand that. Another thing about a woman who's had sex with a lot of men is she may have a dopamine addiction. I mean, most people these days have some kind of dopamine thing going based on the amount of obesity we see and alcoholism and drug addiction. These are all dopamine addictions, basically. But sex is also a great source of dopamine. And if she is capable of getting enough sex to keep that dopamine addiction going, well, it may be really tough to break that habit, Another thing about someone who has a lot of sex is she may have very low impulse control. You take a woman to the mall, not intending to get anything, maybe she's just tagging along with you because you're getting a shirt, and she leaves with more stuff than you did. You're just going to get a shirt, she's just tagging along, and she's got a whole bag full of stuff that she never intended to buy. Low impulse control, very common. Not something that you want in a potential partner or a wife. That's for damn sure. These days, morals and values kind of get lost in a sea of preferences and judgments, memes and suggestions and, hypocritical behavior, and so somehow we've lost a moral compass in our society, and we think that it's some kind of old-fashioned idea. And unfortunately, the judgment that would come from people who lived a moral life, a life that had some ethical code to it, would not stand for women who would be having that kind of lifestyle. Like that would lead to ostracization. Like we would not have them as part of our community. And that was the way it was in the past. Now, maybe that was some kind of, Elizabethan prudish behavior, and maybe it was, and maybe that's something that we should consider. But at the same time, if you're considering, a woman to have in your life, you need to think about what's best for you, and what are your morals and values willing to put up with, because there's something called historical jealousy, and it's something that I've tried to avoid in all of my relationships, because quite frankly, I tried not to care about that stuff, or at least I did then. But it can play a significant role, and of course it depends on the circumstances. Like if your honey's ex-boyfriend was a celebrity or an athlete or someone really special, well, that might be a problem for you, and so you got to keep that in mind. If that was her first love and they were together for 10 years, before you met her, maybe that's something you need to be concerned about, It might be a problem. I don't know. But it is something that you need to make a decision about before you get into a serious relationship with a woman, because if you don't go down that path and uncover all those rocks to see what's hiding underneath them, you may get some unpleasant surprises in the future. And that's the last thing you need in a new marriage. So the principle of supply and demand is definitely going to apply here. And what's really funny is I don't think that most women even considered this possibility. The idea being that if you increase the supply of something, even something personal, like sex, for example, and you provide a lot of sex to a lot of people, well, the demand for that particular commodity, or that version of it anyway, is definitely going to drop. So that means people aren't going to want it anymore. In fact, the novelty of it will wear off and nobody will want it eventually. Also, the value of that commodity is going to drop significantly, meaning that no man is going to want to offer something of value in return for that commodity, if you know what I mean. So that woman who I mentioned at the beginning of the video, who had some 1,572 lovers, if that video ever gets seen by her potential husband at some point in the future, can you imagine? Just think about that for a second. Yeah, she's giving it away for free, and he's paying with his promise, his marital, commitment. Yeah, I would not want to be that guy. I would never be that guy. So, yeah. Today, when the cost of marriage is so high, the risk of marriage is so high, men do not want to take a risk on a woman of low moral character. That is the bottom line. Somehow, the idea of a trophy wife has become a real negative thing. It's been conflated with this idea that a man goes into a relationship with someone who has very low quality or value in order to impress his friends. Maybe she's very physically attractive, but maybe she's dumb, or maybe she's really not a good person in some way. And I think that this narrative of the trophy wife was created by women who aren't trophy wives. Because to any man, a trophy wife is the woman that you want to marry. This is someone who is of high moral quality, who combines beauty with grace and class, and has high self-esteem, is intelligent, and knows how to support her marriage, her man, knows how to be a good wife, someone that you're proud to be with when you're out, someone you're happy to introduce your friends and family to. That's a trophy wife. That's what men think of as a trophy wife. Women who are not trophies, they have a different definition, and we don't accept that. All right, you guys, I've been pretty distracted with my new dog here, so I don't know if I missed some stuff. So if you think of something that I didn't cover, please mention it in the comments. I'm sure there's other stuff. I'm sure there's lots of other stuff. But anyway, I got to get going. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, please like and subscribe. Tell me what you think. If I missed something, mention it in the comments. I'm definitely open to doing more videos on this topic because I think it's an interesting one. And stay healthy, and if you can, stay single.